actually. Chris ran by himself. Two guests, Jack, and who was the other guy?
Ted, our buddy Ted up in Minnesota.
Two big guys we love having on the podcast. Obviously, you have them again. But we got a big episode today. Pretty sure we're live on YouTube right now on the Sports Not account. That's exciting. Because today we got a fun one for you guys. Today we actually have a post-trade deadline episode for you guys. We were thinking about having yesterday, but I actually went out to the stadium last night, called the Yankees game, which clearly did not go the way I thought it went.
So you were not a good luck charm. You were not a good luck charm for them.
No. Yankees are, I think, I counted 3 and 6 when I go to Yankees games this year. I've been to 9 games and they're 3 and 6, so I think I should just stop going to Yankees games.
Yeah, stay away. Give your team a chance, man. Like,
well, we're hearing from a Mariners fan right now who's pretty sure the same record, 4th place, behind the Yankees in the wild.
Mariners have neither won nor lost games when I've attended because I haven't been to any.
Okay.
A little far away.
Well,
so
that's something. That is something. I'll give you that. But just a little exciting stuff for you guys. So again, today we'll do a little shorter episode, 25, 30 minutes. But it's going to be just covering everything that happened the past few days. It's been a crazy past few days, from minor league deals to Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, two of the biggest names on the market that were dealt at the deadline. Just a really big haul, and a lot of players moved around, and so a lot to cover. But we're mainly going to cover the best deals that we thought helped one team or helped both teams, or it was just a rental that could help them for a playoff push. A team that's contending, that's looking for another bat or an extra bullpen arm that can help them, go over the top. So other than that, the Yankees stink. Brian Cashman is probably the worst GM in baseball. I ranted pretty much the entire day. The past 2 days have been really stressful for me. I've been on Twitter nonstop, checking every second. The Yankees, and every time all the time, every hour at least, I see the Yankees check in on Teoscar Hernandez, the Yankees check in on Jeimer Candelario, and we end up with nothing. And the only thing we can pull through with is Kenyon Middleton and Spencer Howard, a guy with the 7.20 ERA that we signed because the Rangers decided to designate him for assignment, so therefore we're going to sign him for cash. So we're paying for a guy who's a 7.20 ERA who's pitching 30 games this season. That's the Yankees for you guys. We officially have the worst team.
It's good to be rich. It's good to have money.
Yeah, it's good to have money and not use it. But a lot of it could have just been the luxury tax, to be honest. I think that Cashman was nervous that they would go over the luxury tax, and if they would spend a certain amount of money at the deadline, then they would go over it. So I think that's kind of what held them back. I think if they would have traded, it would have been prospects, obviously. They did have a couple of prospects, even a couple of rental guys, Bader, IKF, who are contracts are expiring, and they definitely could have used them as bait, but that didn't happen, obviously. But yeah, Chris, what about your Mariners? Didn't see a lot of moves from them, almost, but nothing much.
Yeah, they were a team that definitely had several players that got leaked out into a lot of rumors and potential trades, but they never really came to fruition. We're talking Logan Gilbert, Teoscar Hernandez, Ty France. None of those guys got moved at the deadline, which, for France and for Gilbert, fine, I'm good with. I like them as players, like them as being part of this team, so I'm kind of glad they didn't get moved. On the other side, I'm really curious to see what kind of a haul the Mariners would have gotten if they were to have moved Gilbert. I mean, we saw the trade packages for Max Scherzer, for Justin Verlander, for Lucas Giolito, guys like that. And Gilbert's younger. He's still on the rise in his career. He's still a controllable asset for teams for a long time. The Mariners could have gotten a really, really big haul for him in return, and that's ultimately probably why he wasn't dealt. Was teams just weren't wanting to pay that kind of a price to get him, and I can understand it. the question now is, Gilbert, is he a front of the rotation, like ace of the staff, or is he somewhere like a number two, like an average to the low end number two guy in rotation to a high mid rotation type of a starter in there, and that can be what teams got to decide on how they view him and everything like that. But the Mariners were able to move their closer Paul Sewald and get Josh Rojas, Dom Canzano, and Ryan Bliss, which, all right. I like Rojas. He's been a pretty solid utility player for the Diamondbacks. Having a bad year this year, but up until this season, he's been a good quality player, guy that you can start probably as a super utility guy, kind of play him all over the field just to keep his bat in the lineup because he's been a good hitter. Not so much this year. Dom Canzano, he's almost 26 years old. He's a corner outfielder, can play a little bit of first base, but there's not really been a whole lot of big league experience with him, and so where does he fit in? How's he going to fit with this team? I kind of thought when they got him, I was like, okay, that may add a little more fuel to the fire of the Mariners dealing Teoscar and dealing Ty France, because Canzano can easily fill in either of those positions. And when it didn't happen, now we're left with, okay, what are we going to do with this guy? He's probably a bench bat. He's probably a utility guy, which is great to have because you need depth. But was he really worth trading for? Ryan Bliss, a prospect in the system, could be the Mariners' future shortstop. We'll see how he plays out as he continues to elevate his game and his career throughout the minors. But he could be the top prospect for the Mariners at shortstop position, which is nice considering last season they basically dealt their top two guys in Noelvi Marte and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he's the other guy that went to Cincinnati for Luis Castillo.
I'm pretty sure it's an infielder.
Drawing a blank. Yeah. I want to say Arroyo, but I don't think that's his last name. I can't think of it. Now it's going to bug me. But anyways, the Mariners are left kind of with some players with not a lot of future guys at the shortstop and third base position coming through the minors. So getting Bliss, I think, is a good move in that part. But, Paul Sewald, the way I feel about him is he's the closer for the Mariners, but you put him on a team that's actually going to be contending for a playoff spot and for the World Series. For example, we'll just throw out the Braves. He's not a closer on the Braves. Like, he would be at best like their 8th inning guy or maybe their 7th inning guy. He can definitely lock down an inning or two and be a high leverage arm in there. But on a quality team, he's not the guy. I mean, he still has a little bit of issues in getting some of those final outs in there. He's just not entirely dominant. He had a very dominant, I believe it was 2021 season. And then each year after, he's kind of regressed a little bit, where he's not quite as lights out as he was in that 21 season. But I like the move they made. It's fine. There's nothing big again. And when you look at the Mariners, what were they going to do? I mean, you trade somebody like a Kelnick or a Teoscar or a Ty France or a Eugenio Suarez, you're going to need somebody to replace that. And you don't have anybody in the farm system that you can call up and say, hey, you're the guy that's going to start for us, here and the rest of the season out, and we're still going to be competitive or anything like that. Like, you move those guys, now we're talking about a Dylan Moore filling in there, a Jose Caballero, or a Cad Marlowe, kind of a situation. It's like, okay, you guys are good, but in Marlowe's case, he's young, he's new. We'll see what we can do with what he can do at the major league level. But with Caballero and with Moore, it's like, you guys are probably the 9th best player on a championship starting team that teams are looking to upgrade at, or you're at best you're the utility guy. And if the Mariners are still trying to go for the playoffs, you can't give up those kind of players that are valuable that teams want, because you don't have anything in the way of calling up from the farm system and the return you're going to get. Well, it's in like, why am I trading an Eugenio Suarez to get a replica Eugenio Suarez back? Like, why don't I just keep him? It doesn't, unless I'm getting something blown away, that doesn't make sense. So, and I think that was with some of the other teams that I'll probably talk about a little bit later when we get into talking about the trade deadline here. But it just seemed like some of the teams, guys in, like we've talked about with the Yankees, like guys that you want to trade away that are going to bring in the haul big returns, you don't have necessarily somebody that you can replace right away on that and kind of continue to win. Like Aaron Judge, there's a lot of teams that would pay a big price to get Aaron Judge, but he's kind of the guy for the Yankees, and you move him now what? I mean, you're basically, if you move Judge, you're kind of conceding the season. Granted, we can say that since the Yankees were selling, they're conceding the season anyways. But still, they're not too far out from the third wild card spot. They've got Judge. They've got some guys that they can get hot at the right time. They could close the gap and theoretically make it in. So you don't want to be too overly aggressive one way or the other in being sellers or buyers. So it just made it difficult. Like, there's not a big market for a Harrison Bader type or a Giancarlo Stanton or a DJ LeMahieu or anything like that. And those are guys that you probably want to move, but there's not a big market for them. And there's not going to be a big return in, moving that guy. Like, oh, great, we moved LeMahieu and we got the, whatever, Team X's number one prospect. That's not happening, It's just not. So, like, the guys that you want to move that can get those are guys that you can't move because it's really going to negatively impact your team and that's going forward. And I think we kind of saw that this deadline. A lot of veteran players were shipped out and guys that are kind of not so much on expiring deals, really. Like it was a very active trade deadline, which kind of caught me a little bit by surprise. But it was great to see all the activity and all the excitement. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts on the overall deadline there.
So I think that's sort of the drawback for teams that are in sort of that tough position. Because for a team like the Yankees and Mariners, when you're that deep in a hole, at least in terms of when you're looking at the standings and you're saying, hey, we're this far out of first place, there's no chance that we have no shot of winning the division. So now we have to shoot for a wild card spot. And when there are 4 teams ahead of you, we're talking about the Rays, we're talking about the Blue Jays, we're talking about the Red Sox. In the West, we're talking about the Astros. Not sure who's going to take the West, obviously. They got the Astros and the Rangers are pretty much fighting, and the Angels are also there. So when you got a bunch of teams ahead, for the Yankees and Mariners, I'm pretty sure it's more of like we're in a tough position because, like you said, Chris, when you're looking at your roster and you're looking at guys that you could potentially move because either they're guys that could help a team that's in more contention and that has a better shot at making a deep run to the playoffs, saying like, hey, we can move this guy, he'll help them go over the top. Or you look at it and say like, hey, we have a rental, we have Harrison Bader who's leaving and walking at the end of the year with free agency, so we might as well get rid of him. And like you said, who's there to back it up? So sometimes there's a possibility that could be prospects. In the Yankees' case, that would be Everson Pereira, who's been a guy sort of on the verge of getting a call. He's been really good in the minor leagues, really showing that he's MLB ready. Probably going to be the next man up. But that's just one example. I just think overall for a team that's in this sort of spot, and when you're in that type of position, like Cashman said, Yankees are all in. Not really sure what that means, all in, when you're in last place with 3 games over 500. But listen, he's got to say something. I think what he said at the conference yesterday, he was saying how the Yankees, in the beginning, before the deadline started, they were sort of in a tough spot because they were partially selling and they wanted to buy as well. But once Cashman saw how the second half started, I think it sort of drew him back, like, hey, maybe we should keep it quiet and keep it low-key during the trade deadline, which obviously bothered me a lot. I thought there was a lot of moves the Yankees could have made, but coulda, shoulda, woulda. And I think the offseason is going to be very similar to what we saw this trade deadline for the Yankees. Because Donaldson's going to walk. Severino's probably going to be on the move. I think this season is more going to be focused on shedding money and getting rid of the bad contracts that are expiring or the Yankees will be getting rid of. Bader's going to leave. We're seeing Michael King is heading out. So there's a lot that could have went down. I think just in the Yankees and Mariners case, there's a lot that could have happened but didn't fall through just because of the positioning and where both of these teams are at. But now let's get to more important things because both our teams suck. So let's get to the gist of it. Let's go through the best trades. So I'm going to start off. I'm going to obviously go bigger here. My one trade that I really liked, obviously we're gonna get to Scherzer and Verlander. That'll sort of be our last ones. But looking through the trades, I was looking through earlier everything that happened, everything that went down. One thing that I really liked was the Angels trade. I really thought that the Crone and Randall Grichuk trade was definitely something that helped both sides because you're looking at obviously the Rockies who need younger talent, and they do have a lot of. They have Zach Veen, who's going to be a star in the outfield in a couple of years. Obviously, you got the Rockies who are pretty much have no shot at making any playoffs. So they're obviously going to trade their prospects and they'll trade away their stars for prospects because they're one of the worst teams in baseball. So what they're just going to do is look for teams that are interested. And obviously, Crone and Grichuk were both guys that were on the table before the deadline. They're both guys that the Rockies were saying, hey, these guys can help teams in contention. We can get prospects in return that can help us in a couple of years. So trade was Angels acquire first baseman C.J. Crone and outfielder Randall Grichuk from the Rockies in exchange for Mason Albright and Jake Madden, both in the top 30 for the Angels. I'm pretty sure Albright, I think, was top 15. Madden, I think, was in the 20s, but he might not have been. But I think Crone and Grichuk were both great additions because you obviously have Walsh, who's really been struggling this year. Crone last year really broke out. He's sort of struggling this year, but he could be a nice DH bat whenever he's around. He can play he plays first base pretty well also, so that helps. And then obviously on the Grichuk side, that was obviously the bigger name because he's just a contact machine, batting .307 this year. And he's someone that was highly touted coming into the deadline. He was getting a lot of calls. I think there was 8-9 teams that checked in on him, said like, hey, we're interested in this guy. He can help us down the stretch. So obviously the Angels ended up with him, but I think a lot could happen. I would even say that other teams the Rockies could have gotten more from the Angels, and if it was any other team that's willing to spend and willing to give away prospects, they could have even gotten more for a guy like Grichuk who hits well and plays a good outfield. But really just a very good move by the Angels, just a very solid move. I think they upgraded first base. I think it's an upgrade for Walsh just because of his struggling. Outfield is definitely a big upgrade. Grichuk, he homered his first game there. Crone also had an RBI single, but really overall, it's just a very solid trade for the Angels. I think they really upgraded in several areas, and that really can help them down the stretch.
Yeah, the Angels were definitely one of the most active in buying teams at this deadline. I mean, they also nabbed Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez too from the White Sox to really help bolster that rotation and bullpen. So they're definitely going all in for it. I just don't think they make it. I really don't. It'll be interesting to see how this season plays out for the Angels because if they don't make it, I believe Ohtani has an opt-out after this year, and I don't know if you caught wind of this during the All-Star break, but Seattle was definitely chanting to Ohtani to come to Seattle, and he says he loves it there, so, anyways, I doubt that would really happen anyways. I loved it, but I'm not. But I mean, if there's great odds out there about Ohtani going to Seattle, I might throw a few dollars on it just because why not? But for me, the deal, there wasn't a deal that I specifically liked. I was like, man, that's a great deal, like a really great deal. Like I felt all the buyers that were there, like your Angels, your Dodgers, your Brewers, that team in Houston, they all made some good moves to help make them better and help, I would say, solidify their spot in being in the playoffs. But there wasn't a move that was made that you can say, oh, that puts them over the top. They're now the front runner. Like, for example, the Rangers getting Max Scherzer and Jordan Montgomery. Like, I would really like that if Jacob DeGrom was healthy for them. I'd be like, okay, now you got a 1-2 punch of DeGrom and Scherzer, and then you're going to Montgomery or John Gray or Andrew Haney or Martin Perez or Dane Dunning. I mean, like, that's a really good rotation. Too many guys for the postseason, but, I would say that would be a move that put them as a front runner. I don't feel there was that. Now, the moves that I like is going to be a little bit shocking because it's not getting a lot of publicity and it's not getting a lot of talk. And it's the Chicago Cubs. I like their move of getting Candelario from the Nationals. I mean, Candelario was the best third baseman on the market. He moved from the Nationals back to his original ball club with the Cubs. And I like his move there on that left side of the field with Swanson and him there locking things down. You've got Nico Horner at second, Trey Mancini at first, Cody Bellinger in center, Seiya Suzuki in... Huh?
Mancini's out. They got rid of him.
Oh, did they?
They waived him, yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, he wasn't doing that great anyways, but I still like him. But I mean, I still like the moves that they made there. It wasn't a big deal or anything like that. Like, it's not a big name deal or anything like that. But at the same time, the Cubs were thought to be sellers at the deadline, and their little win streak that they put on right before the All-Star break and after the All-Star break, I think it was Jed Hoyer came out and said that changed their mind and made them become buyers. And they're another team, like I was talking about earlier, like the players that you want to move and the players that we heard a lot about in Cody Bellinger and Marcus Stroman, you're moving those guys, you're going to get a good return for them, but you're also going to hurt your team currently. And, considering the NL Central has been a crazy division to begin with, and I don't necessarily view the Milwaukee Brewers or Cincinnati Reds as teams that are that much better than the Cubs, I think the Cubs were smart in going for it. I think the division can be had. I think they can do it. I'm not worried about the Brewers. They've got their own issues. They always seem to kind of struggle in the second half of the seasons anyways. The Reds, I think what may end up happening is the worst thing that could have happened for them was their success that they had, because I think they'll ultimately miss the playoffs, and then that'll kind of hurt their draft position when we come next year's draft. So granted, those are small little things that could negatively affect them, and their future is pretty bright with their farm system they've got and the young players they have in there. They really just need to get some more bullpen help for them to go along with some healthy frontline starters. But I like the Cubs' moves. I think it helps make them a stronger team to win the NL Central. And when we had Jack on, we talked about it, and we said, the Brewers is kind of their division. There's not a real team out there that scares them. He said, now if the Cubs don't sell at the deadline, that's a team to watch out for, because they have a lot of veterans there who've been there in the postseason, who've won it, and can kind of help these younger guys keep them in line and know what needs to be done to make it there. And so I like the Cubs' moves at this deadline. A team I don't like for their trade deadline is going to be our buddy Ted's Minnesota Twins. When he was on, we talked about it. He wasn't expecting like big shocking moves or anything like that, just because they're in a similar situation where the guys that are going to bring the biggest returns are guys that are going to be hard to replace, and it's going to hurt their team in the short run. But even with that, I still think the Twins should have gone out and made a move. It would have been hard because you're looking at most likely giving up some prospects or packaging some guys with a prospect to get somebody in either the bullpen or to get another bat for them. But as it is, I think the Twins are going to be fine, because the AL Central is the worst division, and the Guardians seem to be sellers, even if they're not going to admit it, but they seem to be sellers. And so it's a Twins division. They should walk into the playoffs, which is great. But I expect them to be a first-round exit, because they just don't have a lot to kind of compete against some of the other AL teams that they're eventually going to go against. Like, I like the Rangers better than them. I like that team in Houston that gets in that's better than, like, Tampa Bay. I like Baltimore. There's a lot of teams I like better than Minnesota that I think could go on and actually have a legit shot at winning the World Series. So I'm a little kind of sad to see the Twins didn't make a deal. I especially am sad because right before the deadline, there was a rumor about the Twins being interested in Teoscar Hernandez and Ty France. And I kind of would like both of those guys being in Minnesota. I think they would have been good fits for those teams. I did ask Ted. I messaged him. I said, so this rumor's going on. Like, does that mean like Mariners here are getting Brooks Lee or Royce Lewis back in return? He said, no. And I was like, well, that's disappointing and way to crush my dreams. But it makes sense. Again, I mean, the Twins aren't necessarily wanting to give up some of their prospects for rental players like a Teoscar Hernandez. But yeah, again, great deadline. Rephael, we got to hear who's either your team that you're disappointed in, or trade that you didn't like to see happen?
So actually, before I get to that, I just wanted to note two things. Like, you were talking about the Twins and how they were sort of your disappointment. So I think in the Twins case, like obviously you were saying at least in their positioning it when they're going into a trade deadline where they're a couple games over 500 in a division that's the worst in the league, and they're thinking like going into the deadline, the Twins front office is thinking like, hey, we're obviously contenders, and at least to win the division. But other than that, we probably have no shot of getting past the first round. So then it's like we'll win the division and then have an early exit. So I think what they're thinking was probably, like I said, well, they'll definitely win the division. I think that since the Guardians didn't do much and didn't really do anything to bolster their holes, I just think it was more of a saying like, hey, we're out of the race now. Maybe we'll get a wild card spot. Probably not. Maybe even win the division, depending on how this goes, because it is a 1-2 game race right now between the Guardians and Twins. I think if there's 2-3 game separation, didn't check, but something like that. It's very close. But I think it was more like we're too far out and we don't have close enough talent to other teams that will make a deeper run in the playoffs. And I think on the flip side, for the Cubs, like you were saying, with Bellinger and Stroman, I think by the time when the deadline came, when they took that huge series before the deadline, I think it was a sleeper, took 2 out of 3. I think it was like, hey, we're now at the point where we have a shot. Mm-hmm. And getting rid of guys like Stroman and Bellinger, who are both free agents at the end of the year, we might as well hold on to them, because at this point, we have a shot at making the playoffs. And if everything goes well and we do make a deep run in the playoffs, then it was worth it. Because if it happens to be that the Cubs go on a crazy streak and they end up making a deep run, they might re-sign them at the end of the year, because then they're going to say, hey, we have enough talent to make another run next year, so let's run it back with them, and Bellinger and Stroman can really rake it in next year if that's the case. So my winners and losers, I'm going to pick my winner team. I just want to mention, this is not my winner, but I think the Mets got a really huge haul. Obviously, Scherzer and Verlander were both left, and they really their whole rotation completely fell apart just now. The Mets got Luis Angel Acuna, Ronald Acuna's brother, Marco Vargas, that was for the David Robertson trade, Drew Gilbert, and Ryan Clifford, both top 5 prospects in the Astros organization for Verlander. So they got a huge haul. I definitely think that's something to note, because the Mets can really make an impact, and really I can see them being loaded in the next couple of years if all these prospects turn up and they all pan out, because they just got a huge haul of prospects, and that's definitely something to take note of. But my winner, gonna have to go with the Rangers. I really think the Rangers, they did a lot. You were talking about how it didn't really put them over the top. I think that the Rangers were already sort of over the top with how they were playing. Obviously, they're in first place right now, ahead of the Astros. And I think that even without getting Montgomery and Scherzer, obviously getting Montgomery and Scherzer is huge. But I think even despite those trades, if those trades didn't go down, I think the Rangers would have made a good run in the playoffs this year. But now getting Montgomery and Scherzer, they're over the top. Like you said, there wasn't anything mind-blowing this season, this trade deadline. I knew going in that Scherzer and Verlander would be moved. There was no last-minute Teoscar and Hernandez getting traded. It was more just the Mets. Steve Cohen going in was like, hey, Verlander, Scherzer, both on the trading block. We're going to trade them. We're too far out of the playoffs. We're not a contending team. Let's trade them. That was sort of the thought process. So everyone knew going in that those two would be on the trading block. But now that the Rangers have added Montgomery, they added Scherzer, I think that now they're at the point where, like, hey, we have enough starting pitching, and our lineup is clicking. And now that we got these two weapons, now we're ready. Now we're prepped, and now we're ready for battle. They're ready to go to war with whoever's ready to face them, honestly, really. I think the Rangers have really proved that maybe the Simeon and Seager trades did pan out after last year. I remember last year after the Mariners spent over $500 million on up the middle, Seager and Simeon, where they both pretty much had down years, and they both come back and have huge years. So this is kind of showing that all the money they spent is sort of panning out now. The Rangers are now becoming one of the better teams in the game, and they are one of the better teams in the game. And I think I really like what the Rangers did at this trade deadline. My losers, I'm obviously going to say the Yankees. I said before, it was a very fragile. That's how I put it. It was a very fragile 2 days because, like I said before, there wasn't a lot that they could have done. Like I said, based on where they are right now, I think they were in a very tough position. Cashman had really just a lot going on at the same time because of where they are right now and the fact that they're pretty much have no shot at winning division at this point, and now it's just a wild card. Now they just have to fight for a wild card. And when you're in a spot, I thought about this for a while because after yesterday, I was very upset with how things turned out. I thought that for literally 3 hours when I was at the Yankees game, I was just like venting, and I could not stop saying how bad Cashman was, and I just kept ripping on it. But now that I thought about it, and the more that I looked into it, I realized that there wasn't a lot that they could have done, because no matter what they did, if they did ending up getting Candelario, that means that they're either giving up one of their top prospects, or they're giving up a player that they need now. And obviously getting Candelario was something that all Yankees fans wanted. Even I wanted to give the Candelario. But at the end of the day, I just think that there's a lot of could-haves and there's a lot of should-haves for Cashman. But at the end of the day, for him, that was the right decision. So as fans, we got to back him up. Maybe, I didn't agree at first, but I just think that based on where the Yankees stood yesterday, I just didn't think there was a lot they could have done. Because there are teams that, in the Cubs case, the Cubs are far ahead. The record-wise, they might be the same, but positioning-wise, they're ahead of where the Yankees are right now. So for a team that would need someone like that more than the Yankees do, because the Yankees don't need Candelario as much as the Cubs do, because the Yankees are probably in a bigger pit than the Cubs are right now. So you're going to get outbid by a team that needs someone more than him, more than you guys. So in Cashman's eyes, even if they would go for Candelario, it's likely that the other team would outbid them, because, like I said, the Yankees aren't going to spend money as of now because of the luxury tax. But they do have prospects. But I just, now that I think about it, I think that it could have been that a bigger contender would outbid Cashman. So that's sort of my breakdown of the trade deadline. Obviously, there's a lot of other trades and a lot of other names that traded jerseys over the past day. A lot of teams upgraded, a lot of teams downgraded. Some teams sort of mixed up and either dumped their farm system or retooled their farm system and revamped it and got a whole new haul of prospects, like the Mets and like the White Sox. They were also big sellers. The
Cardinals
Pirates
got
also
some
got a
big
bunch
returns.
of guys. But overall, I think it was just a very small market trade deadline, Chris, like you were saying. I think that it was just a very there was a lot that went down, yes, but there wasn't anything eye-opening that was like, hey, whoa, this guy got traded. Chris, I'm not sure if you agree with that.
Yeah, no, I do. I think there's a lot of moves that were made for teams, and good for them. But there wasn't, like I said, I don't think there was any clear-cut trade that's like, oh, that was the biggest trade. People are still talking about it today, like it's making, the number one thing that sports radio shows across the country or are writing about or talking about. Like, I don't think that's the case at all. Like I said, I think your biggest names are Verlander and Scherzer moving, but they're moving to teams that, the Rangers are probably making the playoffs anyways. The Astros were probably making it too. So all it did was just help bolster their chances of making it in. It wasn't, it wasn't like, oh, this clearly moves them up to the front. Like I saw some things come up saying like, does the Verlander trade move the Houston up to being the top team or the most team to worry about or whatever? I'm like, no, because one, Verlander hasn't been great in the playoffs recently, and two, they, whatever, they still got a ways to go to, either win the division or make it in. So, good moves all around, but yeah, no big move or anything. I think as long as there's gonna be 3 wild cards, I think we could kind of see stuff like this moving forward. Just because it's gonna be hard for teams to really that are close, but they're either you're gonna have to decide to go all the way in or not. Like the Mariners, they're now third in the division. They're a few games behind third. They got to beat Boston. They got to leap Boston and New York to make it in. Oh, and Toronto, I believe, to make it in. And can it be done? Yeah, it can. Is it going to be done? What have they shown this season? Yeah. So, I mean, why should DePoto go all in and trade, some prospects to get somebody that maybe gets us over the hump, maybe it doesn't. But if it does, great. If it doesn't, this dude better be on the contract moving forward, because if not, then you just bought a rental and you potentially overpaid, and now you're kind of hurting yourself. So, yeah, we'll see how things play out here. Like I said, I like the activity from the deadline. It was fast. It was furious. So many things going through, about players that were going to be dealt that didn't, such as like Eduardo Rodriguez from the Tigers. A lot of other names that came up that didn't get moved. Yeah. So good moves, bad moves. We'll see how this plays out. At the end of the day, it's all about getting wins, and that is from the players that are actually going to be playing on the field. And looking forward to this second half.
Yeah, so that's a wrap for today. I think things could get fun, Chris, with the 3 wild cards, because there's right now a lot of teams in the AL and NL that are fighting for a wild card spot. So I think things will definitely get wild once we get to the final stretch. But for today, that's going to be a wrap for our post-trade deadline episode. Tonight, at 9 o'clock, we have a guest. It's not going to be live streamed, but it's going to be recorded. Obviously, it'll go up on YouTube and Spotify. This also go up on YouTube and Spotify once we get it to Dawson, our awesome editor that does everything, along with Allison, who coordinates everything. Shout out to those guys. And yeah, tonight we're going to have Larry Stone, one of the Seattle Mariners, the beat writers. We had him on before. Chris went solo for that. But we're going to have him on tonight. Definitely exciting stuff. And yeah, that's a wrap for today. Larry, again, make sure to check out Larry Stone's episode once that comes out. That's going to be at 9 o'clock tonight. We're going to ask him everything about them, from the Mariners trade deadline to Jared Kelenich's injury, and to Jose Caballero, who might be playing some more second base with Colton Wong getting designated for assignment. So that's a wrap for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed this live stream. It's up on YouTube. I just checked. It did stream. Thank God, on YouTube the entire time. Make sure that you check out our Twitter page, Replacement Level 1. Make sure to check that out. And make sure to follow us. Make sure to check out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. That's where everything goes on audio. If you don't want to watch things on YouTube, then check it out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Everything is there. Share it. Send it to a friend. And